Fáilte of Gilair, and you're very welcome to our webinar this morning, which is Internationalization at Home through Telecollaboration. And it's been hosted here at the Letterkenny campus of Atlantic Technological University, Donegal. I'm not sure whether you know, but the National Forum is supporting today's event as it reflects the transformation of teaching and learning at both the national and European level. And I believe that virtual exchange can help us shape our new paradigm and enhance how we teach and learn. Indeed, empirical research has shown that telecollaboration can enable students to acquire 21st century skills, thereby preparing them for the globalized workplace. And this is certainly backed up by my own experience of virtual and blended exchange, because my students acquired digital, intercultural and team skills during their learning pathway. And so I'm joined this morning by a distinguished panel of guest speakers, and I'm delighted that everybody was freed up today because they have a wealth of experience to draw on and to contribute. First of all, from across the water, we have Tanya Reifenrath from Germany, Eva Haug from the Netherlands, and then closer to home, once again, Mary Masterson is joining us from the University of Limerick. And then last but not least, our fellow colleagues at the Atlantic Technological University, we have Sarah Berthaud from the ATU Galway and Mariah McCann from ATU Sligo. So as you can see, we have a very distinguished lineup of guests this morning. And before we launch into our discussion, I would ask each guest speaker to give me a brief overview of, and 3 minutes max now, ladies, a brief overview of their experience in the area of telecollaboration in the context of today's topic, internationalization of the curriculum. And so over to you, Tanya.
Mm-hmm. Hi, good morning. Una, thank you so much for having me. My name is Tanya Reifenrath, and I'm joining you today from my office at the University of Göttingen in Germany. And here I'm responsible for the internationalization of the curriculum, meaning that I support faculty members of various disciplines and study programs in integrating international and intercultural perspectives into their teaching, their modules, and their study programs. And oftentimes, internationalization of the curriculum and internationalization at home is still associated with the activities of the international office. So when I started this position, many were a little bit puzzled by the fact that I was not sitting with the international office colleagues, but, and this is a point that I would like to stress very much, from the perspective of academic program development, it's a very short and direct path to actually changing the curriculum. And this is key in making internationalization measures sustainable, and virtual exchange being one of them. So in this sense, I come here with a rather broad perspective on internationalization of the curriculum and internationalization at home, where telecollaboration or virtual exchange is one modality. Here at the University of Göttingen, we've begun our approach to a university-wide implementation of international perspectives in the form of a pilot project a couple of years ago, where we started out with selected programs in 3 different faculties, and we used the close collaboration with the programs to learn from and with them what works and what doesn't work. And it's very dear to me to stress that each program will require a different approach, because the disciplinary culture, because of the role that internationalization plays in that particular discipline, because of the groups of students that are involved, the faculty members who teach in that program, and the ways in which the program might be embedded in the local structures on the campus or in the region. So what worked for our theology program, for instance, namely bringing in non-Western perspectives, was not an approach that our academics in the business education program would opt for. And our academics in the faculties of agricultural sciences or of physics, they needed an entirely different pathway. For them, it was more important that students would understand the role of an international knowledge community in their field and could, via collaborative research projects or collaborative experiments or calculations, take first steps into becoming associated with that international community. So it's really important to be mindful of the context in which internationalization at home takes place and the purposes of virtual exchange in all of this. Together with these faculties, we've drafted a concept that would tie internationalization of the curriculum, digitalization, and diversity orientation together in the spirit of what would later on also become the basis for the university's mission statement for teaching and learning. This was pre-pandemic, and we worked a lot with digitally supported learning materials for blended learning, with the production of audiovisual materials that would give a voice to different perspectives in the curriculum, and with some virtual exchanges that were conducted in a hybrid manner, connecting two classrooms very literally. And with the pandemic, much like in other places, we've seen, of course, this shift towards virtual exchange taking place fully online. Teaching moved fully online at our university, much like at your universities. And we've, of course, moved away from the immediacy of the campus. And this has also shifted internationalization of the curriculum measures a little bit further away from the diversity of the local context and the communities. And I think in the future, it's also important that we become more mindful of such opportunities again, especially if we connect learners across borders in telecollaboration or virtual exchange in order to foster intercultural exchange, that we draw more on our local contexts again. So Una, with this, I want to hand back over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. And you did that at breakneck speed, Tanya. That's a wonderful overview. And I'm going to go over now to Eva. Eva, could you give your 3-minute overview, please?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Una. It's a real pleasure to be here, and also together with Tanya, with whom I work together in the European Association of International Higher Education, the EAIE. We're both part of the expert community Internationalization at Home. So much like Tanya, I am also an educational advisor. So my job is within the Teaching and Learning Center, and very similar to what Tanya described. People also thought, because my portfolio is about internationalization of the curriculum and COIL, virtual exchange. So we call our virtual exchange efforts COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning, but very similar to telecollaboration. And so let's say the umbrella of virtual exchange. And similar to what Tanya described, people also thought that it would be a logical place for me to be with the international office, but I have always advocated that I should be closest to curriculum developers and as close to curriculum and academics, or in our case, lecturers, as possible. So I work with the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, and that's slightly different from Tanya's experience. So Tanya works with academics, I work with lecturers, and I think a big advantage of universities of applied sciences, as we have them in the Netherlands, is that our education, our curriculum is problem-based and project-based. So our academic or lecturers are used to developing their curriculum in the form of projects, in the form of collaborative tasks. Now, not always international collaborative tasks, but it's a smaller step maybe to convince lecturers to engage with other perspectives across borders. And the Netherlands being such a very small country, it is quite easy to already connect across borders. For us, within 2 hours, we are actually international. But also similar to what Tanya describes, I think it's important to place or to see COIL virtual exchange within the context of the international strategy for internationalization at home, or internationalization of the curriculum. I started as a lecturer. I teach intercultural competence, and I sometimes still do, because I really enjoy teaching and working with students. And I also like to be connected to the practice of embedding COIL or virtual exchange into the curriculum. I think it helps me to become a better trainer, professional developer, to help others develop this. So I still combine it, but my role has transitioned to fully being part of the Teaching and Learning Center, where my colleagues are curriculum developers, blended learning specialists, specialists on assessment, etc. So this is really a good place for me to do what I'm trying to do. So our internationalization strategy is focused on inclusive internationalization. So for us, it is very important to see COIL as one of the ways, one of the activities that we can develop to reach all 100% of students, to give them an international and intercultural experience before they graduate, because we feel that in the urban metropolitan complexity and diversity of of where we are, not just in the country, but also within Europe, it is important to give our graduates the necessary skills, mindset, attitudes, and knowledge to be able to find work and to be employable within that context. So reaching 100 is important, but also thinking about how to do this in an inclusive manner. So we have labeled our internationalization strategy as inclusive internationalization. And two things are important: inclusive, not as in so reaching all students, and also those that might not recognize themselves always in how we talk about internationalization, definitely going beyond the narrative of internationalization equals mobility. We know that only 10% of our students are actually internationally mobile. Now, they do travel, but they travel for leisure, and often they stay within Europe or even the northern part of Europe. So it is important for them to acquire these skills, but also in a way that they feel that their voices are heard. So inclusive means within our institution that all students, all diverse student population, recognizes themselves and feels heard and seen, and feels that it contributes to their graduate profile, but also inclusive in with whom we work. So for us, decolonization of the curriculum is one of the topics that we like to focus on, and virtual exchange has been a successful way for us to work with partners that we might not otherwise work with. So to be mindful in our collaborations and our partnerships, to be equitable, and to seek also other types of knowledge that we might not be able to provide our students. So to bring in this pluriform perspective, or these different perspectives, into our curriculum. Now, this is not always an easy thing to do, so it requires sufficient support. Our institution offers professional development for internationalization of the curriculum, and also specifically to develop COIL or virtual exchange projects. And we do this online so that we can bring in our international partners and learn together how we do this, because we feel that a good design and proper support of virtual exchange leads to better products and better projects, and with better learning for the students and a better experience. We started virtual exchange before we knew that this was actually the modality that we were doing it. We combined mobility, short mobility, to partner universities close to us in Europe with online collaboration, but it wasn't until later in 2014 that we sort of understood that there was a name for this modality, and we started calling our projects COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning. So in 2014, that we knew of projects that were not dependent on mobility, that were purely done online. We started with about 2, and in 2019 we reached over 100 projects per year. So, and I think there's probably more, because there's academics or lecturers doing these types of projects without knowing that they're actually called COIL. So that is the case, I think, in many universities. Sometimes, though, what they describe as a COIL project is not necessarily that. So there's always this ambition to improve the quality of our collaboration so that students get the most out of it. But we have definitely been able to scale, because for us, COIL, as part of our internationalization or inclusive internationalization strategy, really is one of the means in which we try to reach 100% of students. So the 10% that go on mobility for us is seen as an extra, but we want all of them to at least have access to the minimum of one coil during their academic experience. So we're not there yet, obviously, because we have 46,000 students. So that's a very large student population. But within the Faculty of Business and Economics, that has around 14,000 students, we have reached the 100%, and we're very happy about that. And we're using that as a case study to see what would work, because I agree with Tanya that different faculties and different disciplines require different approaches, different partnerships. And the beauty of virtual exchange to me is the adaptability. So I think with that, I would like to hand over back to you, Una. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aoife. And we have so much to learn from the best practice that's out there in both Göttingen and Amsterdam. So I'm going to come closer to home now and ask Mary to perhaps outline what's going on there in Limerick. I know that, Mary, you are involved at second level because in your capacity as Etwinning ambassador, you have done tremendous work there in second level schools. So could you maybe give us a little bit of an insight as to what's happening at third level there in Limerick?
Hello, I'm delighted to be here today. Thank you for your invitation. There's a lot happening in the space of e-twinning. So I'm just going to introduce myself briefly. My name is Mary Masterson, and I'm a lecturer in education in the School of Education here at the University of Limerick. And so I'm involved in initial teacher education for students across many different disciplines. And e-twinning is a European-funded program. It's funded through the Erasmus Plus program, and it's in existence since 2005. So it's a long history, but it has been changing. It's a program primarily. It started off to link classes in different European schools, and it promotes interdisciplinary, so cross-subject project works, and the projects could be of different durations and different of interest groups, and teachers also can exchange pedagogical knowledge and co-design projects together that they would like to work on with their students collaboratively. There's many different countries involved, and this program has really expanded. So we've got a lot of membership in many different countries throughout Europe and elsewhere. And in more recent development is looking at how can we introduce initial teachers, so new teachers to the profession, familiarise them with the e-twinning programme. And my work as the initial teacher education ambassador here for Ireland nationally is to lead on this. So to look at how we can embed and integrate project work through using the e-twinning program with our student teachers, so that they will become familiar already in their studies and under teacher education programs with e-twinning, and as a result gain valuable skills and develop their confidence, as a matter of fact, as well, so they can become familiar, so that when they go into schools as teachers, they will transfer this knowledge and this experience they've gained into their own practice. Really, e-twinning is very much connected to EU policy, the policy of equity and inclusion. If I mentioned inclusion, but we would look at really on the e-twinning program, the aspect of inclusion, that all students receive a quality of education, but also there is an element of fairness. So what I mean here is that students from backgrounds of socioeconomic disadvantage would also have access to developing intercultural, acquiring new perspectives, and also skills, developing digital skills for today's world, I suppose 21st century skills. This would be something that we would see as important, so that all learners can engage with peers in different countries, and you can engage in a project just with one country or a number of countries. My own work as an Etwinner started off in 2006 as a classroom teacher. So I embedded in the curriculum a project with a lower secondary school group of students, that they would connect with another class in another country to learn a little bit more about their own culture, but also to develop an enhanced understanding of another culture, other perspectives. Then I have worked in more recent years, I have looked at how in teacher education and our programs here in the University of Limerick could I embed Etwinning program into the curriculum. And I'm looking at currently is creating a space where student teachers can opt in to a program, a project where they will link with teacher students in Italy and Spain, and they can work on a project that really connects with their own stage as beginning teachers. And the view is that this experience in time, that they will, when they go into schools, that they will continue to use Etwinning and all the different tools there for the benefit of their own learners, and also to develop and extend, I suppose, their own pedagogy. What is extremely interesting in Etwinning at the moment, Etwinning in 2022, this year, has now joined other communities such as the European School community. So this is idea, how can we link with other communities already in existence, and how can we learn from each other and share our experiences with others. So this is a very interesting space, I think, and I think it's very much a space that is in infancy at the moment, to see how actually in practical terms how this will happen. There are Etwinning ambassadors as well that are practicing teachers, and they come from both what is innovative. They come from the primary school levels, so for younger learners, and also from secondary school level. And also there's work underway to see the potential and the possibilities in the early school sector, again for children who are not in school, who are in the the early years, that they too can experience another culture at an early age. Part of my work, I'm working on a project on migrant education at the moment. It's a research study, and it's looking at ways of helping teachers, schools and parents to help newcomer students from migrant, refugee and asylum-seeking backgrounds. And part of that study was a study trip to an intercultural school in Greece. And this school caters for children who migrant students, from refugee students coming into Greece. And it was really interesting to see that this school was an Etwinning school, and how that, I suppose, that aspect, that connection for those children who were displaced, that they could show their home linguistic knowledge, their cultural knowledge, and they could learn from others. I thought it was a very beneficial experience and enriching for the children and for the teachers in this intercultural school. So there's many different iterations and possibilities, I think, for the Etwinning program. And it is growing, the interest in it. And I suppose the challenge, I would see it, is how to sustain this and how to make Etwinning an integral part of the curriculum across the disciplines. We look at a big, I suppose, contemporary issue for teacher education here in Ireland is developing global citizenship education, so that our citizens are connected and aware of other issues in the wider world. And this, I suppose, program can also contribute to this agenda as well, that we can develop individuals who are more proactive because they are familiar that the other isn't seen something as foreign, but actually the other is deconstructed, and you get to know and build an enhanced understanding and appreciation of different cultures. And I suppose we're living in a world that is very multicultural now, and seeing multiculturalism, diversity of linguistic, religious beliefs, ethnic background, different cultures, different ways of understanding and being in the world is really important for our society, for a multicultural society. So at school level, we have a real opportunity, and here in initial teacher education as well, we have a real opportunity to make a difference, to contribute and to help prepare future teachers and students to be active citizenships, engaged, connected, and also in a world that's very digitalized, that they have also practical hands-on experience of developing digital literacy skills in a way that is supports their own learning. So it's something, so I'm very excited about this opportunity here today to give you just, I suppose, a small short insight into the Etwinning program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mary, and I'll certainly be back on to you in relation to Etwinning, because we're trying to get that going here in Donegal. I don't know whether you know, but they have a new platform now, and people are navigating their way through that and the challenges of it. But now I think best go on to our fellow colleagues here in the Atlantic Technological University, because we're gone a little bit over with the 3-minute schedule, but that's okay. It's very, very interesting, so I'm loath to interrupt you. Would you like to start, Sarah, there perhaps, and tell us about your experience with virtual exchange?
Yes, Una, how are you? I hope you can hear me. And I have the timer, so I'm hoping I won't be going over the 3 minutes too much. Anyways, just to tell you that my own experience in telecollaboration is quite young. I have a lot of experience in collaboration in person, but virtual or telecollaboration for me only started in the classroom last year. And perhaps what I thought would be more useful for you was to hear the reasons why I started. And it's to do with my teaching. I'm a lecturer in French in the ATU Galway City. And typically our curriculum is for French language and culture. We have mixed groups. So very often I have 3 to 6 different programs in the same classroom. So I can have, for instance, in the hotel school, students who are studying tourism, culinary arts, hotel management, heritage, event management. In the business school, then these guys for me are separate, but in business, I could have students who are studying general business or sales and marketing or entrepreneurship or finance or business information systems. So very, very different subjects. The other issue I have is that a lot of the students have very diverse levels. We are supposed to propose French for A1 level in the first year. So A1 for those outside of the language curriculum is usually beginners. And most of my students have done French before. So if you do beginners with them and it's not applied, the chances are they've studied that already, so they get really bored. And I guess the telecollaboration for me was an opportunity to offer them the cultural element with something very interactive with peers in France. B was to try and keep motivated all the different levels. And C was also a chance to get them to reflect on their applied subject. So I started last year with the Université de Toulouse Paul Sabatier, so l'IUT Paul Sabatier, Toulouse 3, because we have an Erasmus exchange with them. And the hope was to try and motivate the business students to engage in Erasmus in the years to come. So we did conduct that last year. However, the lecture has now moved on to second years. So the collaboration I had with them has ceased this year, just for this year. And I'm now working on a telecollaboration for semester 2 with Nanterre Paris 13, with, again, a lecturer who got in touch with me out of the blue to see if we could put something together. So that's my 3 minutes, and I hope I've given you an idea of what we're doing at HU Galway City for French anyways. Thank you.
Excellent timekeeping, Sarah. I'm really impressed, and I suppose the less time we give to our overview, the more time we have for discussion. But it is really interesting to hear all of the really interesting work that's going on. And indeed, Sligo is no exception, because I know that Mariah McCann has been involved in COIL. You mentioned this earlier, Aoife, when you were giving your overview. Over to you now, Mariah.
So thank you very much, both to Una and to Eva and to Tanya. And I suppose I'm going to follow a little bit in Sarah's footsteps as a practitioner. My name is Mariah McCann, and I'm a lecturer based in ATU on the Sligo campus in the Department of Business. And I suppose, again, I'm relatively new to virtual internationalization and exchange, though I've had some experience, I suppose, with physical mobility in times past. And my experience, I suppose, came through an opportunity afforded to us by a pilot project developed by the International Office, so linked a little bit to what Tanya spoke about earlier. And the opportunity was to participate in a collaborative online international learning project with our partner institution, Georgian College, based in Ontario in Canada. And the project started in February 2021, so again, relatively recent experience. And as faculty, both myself and my colleague, Cathy O'Kelly, who's also based in the Department of Business with me, worked with Professor Janet O'Neill-Scott, based on the Barry campus of Georgian College. And our interest is really what Eva and Myriad also spoke about, the building of global citizenship skills, intercultural awareness, cultural competencies for our students. So we were very much driven by building in an internationalization opportunity into our curriculum that would allow our students exposure and to build that awareness and skills over a 7-week project. So the project ran for 7 weeks, from the end of September through to November 21. And the students worked collaboratively in small groups of between 6 and 7 students, a mix of both the Irish-based and Canadian students. But again, that didn't quite reflect the diversity in the groups, because as we know, all of our classrooms are much more diverse and multicultural in their nature. And we also delivered the project, I suppose, during the pandemic. So there were the implications of both lockdowns and partial returns to campus. So while the Irish-based students had a partial return to campus, our Canadian colleagues were still in full lockdown, and a lot of their students still based in their home country of India as part of the exchange. So we did have to grapple with the time difference. We did synchronous and asynchronous work, and some of our colleagues were 5 hours behind us and some 7 hours ahead. So there really was a challenge in that. But the real richness in the learning was in the diversity, but also for us as faculty. And what we're doing now is to build on that experience. Both Kathy, myself and Janet, and a colleague, Kelly Fox from Georgian College, are building an international virtual education and learning academy to develop resources to support our colleagues to also engage in the many forms of virtual internationalization, whether that's guest speakers or a full COIL project. And we're working this semester with a community of practice from both of the institutions to get that disciplinary diversity as well, because obviously our expertise was in business, but we're also working with faculty colleagues across science, computing, and other areas, engineering as well. So we also attended the International Virtual Exchange Conference in October in Valencia, which exposed us to a lot of opportunities to benchmark and to network. So I'm very pleased to be participating here today. Thank you, Una.
Thank you so much, Mairead. I'm delighted that all is going so well for you in Sligo in your efforts to widen access to this wonderful opportunity. And of course, it is all about enabling as many students as possible to participate. So that concludes the overviews from each of our guest speakers, and thank you very much. It's just heartening to hear what's going on elsewhere. Now what I'm going to do is just ask the audience if there's anybody out there, if you have, while we're having our panel discussion, just in case you have some questions that come to mind, you should write them into the chat box. And we have somebody keeping an eye here on that box, and we will do our best to address them and hopefully give you a response. You can throw them into the ring for discussion if you wish. And so please, give us the wealth of your own experience as well if something springs to mind. So now, without any further ado, we're going to get the panel discussion going. My own experience of virtual exchange has been that it's more or less here in Donegal anyway, confined to the typical language student who has signed up for a BA in language and business or whatever it is. And I really do feel strongly that the engineers and the scientists and other students among us are losing out. So this idea of embedding it into the wider curriculum is what I would like to do if I can here in Donegal, ATU Donegal. So I suppose what I'm interested to hear is how we go about doing that strategically. I suppose it's not going to happen by itself. So we need to, I suppose, drive it and make it happen. So that's why I'm very interested to hear the best practice from other institutions, and indeed yourself, Mairead, because you're making great headway there in Sligo. Does this need to go as something that's added in and added extra, a non-accredited option, or can we have it accredited and have it embedded into other disciplines? So I think I'll ask perhaps Tanya or if maybe Tanya, I see that you're live now. Would you like to give us the benefit of your experience there in Göttingen?
Sure. I'll go ahead and then I'm sure the other colleagues will want to chime in. I would actually strongly advise against having it as an add-on or something that runs on the side without any credits for the students, because our students have a fully packed schedule already, so we will only get the highly engaged students to commit to something that happens on top. And even though we might perceive the curriculum as inflexible, or even though we might have legal frameworks that hinder us from actually integrating it firmly into the curriculum at first sight, I want to say that we should bear in mind that a virtual exchange can happen within existing modules. So it can be part of a course that's already happening So from a structural viewpoint, it could actually be implemented fairly easily. I think what we need academics who are committed, who are willing to imagine different ways of doing things, and we just need to, could perhaps begin by posing the question, what could you do with this group of students, with the peers, with a co-facilitator that you couldn't do if you were to facilitate this class by yourself in a local context, and take this as a starting point to think about what the added value of virtual exchange would be. And then I think it's very important if we have it within the curriculum so that we could actually target the bigger number of students, target the 100% as Eva mentioned.
Thank you for that, Tanya. And do you have anything to add in there, Eva? Has that been your experience in Amsterdam?
Absolutely. So I think the interesting thing about curriculum internationalization through modalities such as COIL or virtual exchange is that it requires a bottom-up and a top-down approach. So it often starts bottom-up with academics or lecturers that see these opportunities, and then it requires top-down support. So it needs to be embedded or connected to the institutional strategy, because it requires an extra effort on the part of the lecturers to develop this and to facilitate it. So it's good to recognize that. And every institution has a different way to do that. But completely agree with Tanya. We are not in favor of COIL projects being add-ons or that, without credits. It's important to embed it into the curriculum, because that way there's learning outcomes connected to it, there's assessment connected to it, so we can see what did we set out for them to learn, and are they actually learning this, and how does it contribute to the curriculum or that course in particular. Something that we have found very successful in our institutional context, because we have committed to connect our curriculum to the Sustainable Development Goals. And these are complex issues that require multiple perspectives and multiple disciplines to help solve them. So in order to do this, we find that COIL or virtual exchange is a good way to help academics actually connect their curriculum to the Sustainable Development Goals. So we also are in favor of interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary virtual exchange collaborations. This enables us, again, to look at these complex problems or these wicked problems from different angles and different perspectives. Even if lecturers are not necessarily motivated to internationalize their curriculum, they are interested, or there's even a mandate from above to connect our curriculum to sustainability and to diversity and inclusion, in our case, and to digitalization. And those are the three key words in our strategy. And virtual exchange is often a means to that end. So COIL or virtual exchange is never the goal, but it is a means to an end. And even internationalization of the curriculum is a means to an end. And that for us has proven to be a successful strategy to frame it that way. Thank you.
Yes, that's really interesting there. I'm not sure whether the others want to come in at this stage, but Sarah, I see you've gone live.
Yes, I had a comment saying that if you gave it credits, as was mentioned, it would make it more inclusive and less elitist. Because at present in the institution where I am, anyways, I have very, 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 very few students who don't work. So if you don't give credits to something, it's really an extra burden for them, and it makes it not accessible. And also it makes it sound like you don't have as much support from the staff. There's not buy-in into the process. So yeah, definitely for the credits, and as Tanya was saying, there's often ways of assessing that can be just a little bit widened. So if you're doing presentations, for instance, why not get them to rehearse the presentation with the group from abroad? Or there's ways, flexibility there. You just need to be a bit creative and just plan ahead, really. That's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Yes.
Could I come in?
Yes. Yeah. I suppose, yes. Mary, you spoke first.
Yeah. Yes, it's just something also that I think you do have to be creative. In my own context, I had started off or delivering workshops optional to all the students and those that I work with on school placement and undergraduate program, and those on the postgraduate program, the professional masters. So I offer these, and it was optional. But then I began to think about how could I better embed it. So a module that I deliver on contemporary issues and policy, and how I framed it as I looked at different policies that we were looking at, like and I showed connections into what the policy meant for your own practice, and ways that perhaps that you could bring that into your practice in actions with your students. So I tried to show a connection to their own discipline, and the students to think themselves, well, where does this embed in my own, say I'm a mathematicals teacher, or I'm going to be a teacher of science. So that was kind of a way. And my latest one, which is I'm going to run, is actually get that space that you connect with a group of teachers, initial teachers, new teachers in another country, well, actually in 2 countries, in Italy and in Spain, and have that space that you can talk about these things and learn from each other. But it's very much trial and error, and trying to try new things to see how best to embed. So it's just a kind of a learning process at the moment for me.
Thank you for that, Mary. And I think, Mariah, you were trying to get in as well there.
Yeah, it was really to agree with my colleagues. It's very much, there's a lot of flexibility already there in the curriculum, as Tanya had said, and I think that's the approach that we took as well. It was embedded within the continuous assessment element of both the modules or courses in Sligo and in Georgian College as well, because it was about embedding internationalization into the fabric of what we do with the students. But we also centered the project on the UN Sustainable Development Goals as well, just picking up on what Eva spoke about as well, because there's such rich commonality there for wherever you're based as a student. They are obviously universal, and that helped us encourage the students to build awareness and to have that sense of being in it together, the interdependence, because there was that sense of shared responsibility or ownership of the content of the project. And they were from different courses, I think, as Sarah had said as well. So you don't have to have a lot in common between the groups. You have a lot of flexibility with continuous assessment. And if you're already doing group work or presentations, they really align themselves to that international virtual exchange potential as well. So, and our experience is the bottom up and top down as well. We're trying to meet strategic objectives, but it's very much getting involved, on the ground in the classroom to try and implement it.
That's very interesting, Mairead. And I suppose the curriculum is one thing, and how we put the scaffolding there for this to happen. But what about our students? I suppose we want to increase mobility, and is it true that I suppose the majority won't be up for physical mobility, but in fact, most of them can do virtual? So the virtual way seems to be the one that will include, it could include 100% of our students, but I suppose definitely over 50%. Sarah, you were going to come in.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind. There are a few, in terms of physical mobility, the main issue my students are reporting to me. So again, that's just my perspective from what I'm hearing. It's the money issue. But funny enough, we've had a few students on placements in France recently who have given presentations to the class virtually, which has been very helpful, because they're reporting that they've actually saved money abroad compared to Ireland. So these guys were on placement, right? They weren't getting paid as much as in Ireland, but the expenses were much lower. So they were better able to survive abroad than they were here. So I think it reassures the students. But to come back to the virtual element, what I have found in the classroom last year is that by having those kind of personal links and discussing with students out there. They were getting the information firsthand about cost of living, about what the university was like, and vice versa. The Irish students were given the same information to those French students. So it was quite reassuring for them. And I guess with the pandemic, what we've seen recently is an increase in motivation to actually travel from being cooped up for 2 years. So there has been an increase in demands at the International Office for Erasmus. And again, when I mentioned the telecollaboration, the option of doing that in the classroom, the responses were quite positive as well. So I think there is motivation and there is interest. And what they reported, because I did run a bit of a survey last year with the students, and what they reported they really liked was first having this contact remotely, because there was the safety of being at home, safety of the screen, safety of being a bit removed, so you weren't making a fool of yourself in front of the class, you weren't making a fool of yourself in front of people, really. So they found the virtual aspect of it very reassuring for talking and for getting in touch.
Great. And I think that what you said there about virtual exchange being a sort of a precursor to the real thing, it prepares, it gives them that comfort zone while they're still in their safe environment. I think that's an excellent idea there, Sarah. Anybody else want to come in there on virtual? Everybody. So I'll take you one by one. Tanya, I think you were the first hand to go up there.
Sure. That's so interesting to hear that, Sarah, that's your experience. I can also see how our students are becoming more eager to travel again, but we also still have like the vast majority who, for very different reasons, also other reasons than financial reasons, is not going to be able to travel. And I want to also point to one other thing that's related to virtual exchange is very important to me. And I don't want to put it in juxtaposition with mobility, but I want to say that, and I think this is also something that you've been exploring in previous webinars, virtual exchange hinges on the reflection of the exchange that students are engaging in, a reflection of the critical incidents they are encountering and the change of perspective that might be happening to them. And this is where I think that a purposefully designed virtual exchange could even do more for students' intercultural competencies than sending them to study abroad or sending them on a placement someplace else, because usually the study abroad alone does not include a reflection component. So it's very hard for students to pause and to rethink these critical incidents. And in the virtual exchange, there should always be room for that. So I think within that sense, we can do a lot for students' skills development if we engage them in virtual exchange.
Yes, that's a really good point there, Tanya. I had students who went to Bremerhaven to learn German, and all they had was contact with Germans trying to improve their English. So whereas if it's structured and actually, that the teamwork is 50-50, German, some English, and it can actually be more effective. So somebody else was trying to come in there. Mary, I think you also wanted to talk about this topic.
Yeah, as a teacher educator, for us, for teachers, it's about also learning about innovative pedagogies, different teaching strategies from colleagues. So it's about creating a learning community with your peers, the teachers. So it's as beneficial for teachers as for actually, like, for those that are designing the project, as the students, that so there's a huge learning, it's a holistic learning opportunity. And in certain programs, it's quite difficult to get the freedom to go abroad physically, like say in teacher education programs where a large component of your time is a placement within school settings, 2 different school settings. So this is a great opportunity actually even for those cohorts of students, because of the program requirements, don't going to have the time to go abroad during their studies. So it really is a game changer, that it really allows this, and maybe in time, this first-hand experiential experience, that they may go themselves abroad once they finish their studies or during their professional working lives.
Yes, good point there, Mary. I suppose a blended approach is always best, but certainly in terms of the physical upheaval of going abroad, it doesn't suit everyone, whereas virtual is within reach of everyone. That's what I like about it. Aoife, you're going to come in.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with a lot of things that were said, and I definitely, but obviously also agree with some of the points that Tanya raised. That when carefully designed, it could be more impactful for students, and we can at least measure what the students are learning. I wanted to respond to something, Una, you said, and this is because this is a sort of a persistent narrative that we hear a lot. You mentioned mobility, or you refer to mobility as the real thing. And this is a very persistent narrative that mobility is where we really acquire in these competencies, and virtual. And it's also because of the word virtual that it sometimes has this connotation of not being real. I understand it's an automatic thing that we sometimes say, but I would like to encourage people to reconsider what we mean by virtual. Actually, Piet van Hoven, who's with the University of Antwerp, wrote an interesting blog for the EAIE that is accessible, where he challenges people to maybe stop referring to virtual exchange as virtual, because these are not avatars, these are real experiences, and what they are learning can actually be very impactful, but we have to design and develop it very carefully and intentionally. And one other point I wanted to make, when we talk about mobility, also short mobility, it is very often limited to countries that are close to us and thereby sometimes familiar to students. One of the big advantages that in my context, in my university, we see for virtual exchange or COIL is that we can collaborate, for example, with the Global South. So right now we have a big Erasmus project going on where we collaborate with countries in South Africa, where we collaborate with South Africa and different partner institutions within that context, rural universities, urban universities, and our students would never travel there, most likely. Only 1% of students in South Africa is actually internationally mobile. So this is a completely new playing ground in which we are learning how to unpack difficult concepts and how to have uncomfortable conversations about whose knowledge are we actually learning, and how do we collaborate in a more equitable way. So I think sometimes virtual exchange can actually open us up to more challenging international, intercultural experiences than sometimes mobility could. Thank you.
It's an interesting point, I think, to finish up with, and we only have 1 minute left, so I feel that we could chat on for much longer, but I do realise that many of you have other commitments, and I don't want to hold you up any longer. And unless anybody has anything to add, I'm going to bring this to a close. Thank you so much for freeing up this morning. I've learned so much, and I hope we can continue our dialogue into the future. The best of luck to you.